My name's Will. I head up the Data and CRM practice here at Practicology. Some say I'm a bit of a pedant when it comes to data, but I don't agree with them at all. Anyway, I've been with the company for 611 days, 5 hours and 34 minutes. And I've worked in senior positions at a number of retailers, including Bowden, Fatface, Conran, and most recently at Lyle & Scott. So that's the intro. So a little bit about T.M.Lewin. So T.M.Lewin is primarily a menswear brand. They were established in Jermyn Street 118 years ago. They started with their pioneering signature product called the coat shirt, which rather novelly buttoned down the front. So to quote the London Opinion newspaper at the time, negating the need to be put over their head. Thus, there is no chance of a man who is accustomed to brushing his hair before putting on the shirt of ruffling it in the putting on process, which I think you can all agree we're all very grateful for. Today, T.M.Lewin has 181 stores and concessions in 11 different countries. So the aim of the project really was to help T.M.Lewin get an understanding of best practice retail segmentation. So what this means is that they, at T.M.Lewin, they've got a really, really clever guy called Will, so a great name too. And he came from Paddy Power, so he knew an awful lot about gaming and not so much about retail, so he needed to be brought up to speed on what the difference were between betting and retail. They really wanted to understand segmentation, loyalty, lifetime value of their customers who purchase multi-buyer shirts versus single shirts was a particular question, and understanding the impact of the current offer strategy. So the first thing we did was we got a snapshot of their data. So it was a big download of everything that they had. So, and then we ran it through our data audit process. So a data audit is a snapshot of the customer data. We profile your customers using Experience Mosaic profiling tool. We analyze your trading data to identify positive and negative oddities. The outliers are always the interesting bit. And finally, we identify distinct segments. T.M.Lewin's data was nearly 4 years of transactional data with both on and offline, nearly 1 million customers, so 11.5 gigabytes of data, which is always fun. Very low duplicated addresses. This was because we actually have a deduplication routine as we import the data into our own systems. And then a few highlights: 31,000 of their customers had moved since their last order. 748 people had died, which is a little sad, and 5,788 were in trouble for not paying their bills and had CCJs, which is not that relevant to T.M.Lewin, they don't offer credit, but it's always fun to find out which of your customers are a bit naughty. So the first thing we looked at was their demographics. We do this using Experience Mosaic profiling tool. What Mosaic is really, it's just a data set that allows us to profile customers against a ton of different data sets. So they collect data from things like the census, the OpenGov data, questionnaires, so those weird questionnaires you sometimes get in a kettle, when you buy a kettle and so forth, social media, credit scoring, spending habits, and a ton of other places. And they build really robust models that are solid, do work, and are actually getting better all the time. Then what we do is we try to show the client where their customers actually are. So with this map, the size of the circle represents the number of customers in a postcode. The colour of the circle represents the percentage of people who are in that area as a percentage of the population. So the darker the colour, the higher the penetration. That's in relation to their own data. And it allows you to sort of have a quick look. Now, what's not terribly surprising that a company that sells city shirts is that they're very much centred in London and other cities, but interestingly, spread across southern England, even outside the city, there's quite an even spread. That's an indication of client referrals. We also give an interactive version of this to the client, which allows them to zoom right down to street level if they want to. And it can be useful for things like planning where to open stores. So, for example, in here, there's a cluster of customers in Cambridge, but not in Oxford. So perhaps Oxford might be a good place for them to look at opening a store, if only somebody hadn't put a whopping great university and all that prime real estate. So we then run through all the normal demographics that you would expect to see. So you've got your age, income, life stage, and what that actually means to the brand. We don't do it this quickly with the client. We go through each one individually. But for example, you can see here that based on council tax bandings, their customers live in larger houses or posher flats. But where they do, they're probably sharing flats, because you can see from their life stage that they're older flat sharers, because who can afford to buy in London?
Can I just ask you, and apologies if you've covered this, I was late coming in. Does your data differentiate between, shop customers versus online customers?
Oh, we can do that, yes, and that's later on. We also provide a visual representation of their customers and what they look like. We can do one or one of these for every customer type, and it helps the more creative and visual members of the teams to grasp what their customers look like as we talk through what this actually means to their business. We then look at demographics of different segments. Based on the client's requirements. So in the case of T.M.Lewin, we really wanted to understand the impact of their discount strategy. So we looked at full price versus discounted buyers, and highlighted the main differences between these groups. We can also look at them with their buying categories. So again, with T.M.Lewin, we looked at which were their most dominant categories. So whilst people buy over many categories, we look at their dominant categories, which are categories they've spent the most money in or the most products in. We usually agree on what those criteria are before we start the project. And then to Sarah's point, we also look at online versus offline. So T.M.Lewin have done a very good job, much better job than your average retailer at collecting store customer data at point of sale, which isn't an easy task. So yeah, well done to them. And then wherever possible, we identified different segments and attribute a value to each one as well as other insights. For example, and this bit's made up because I don't want to actually give the T.M.Lewin's actual findings, but maybe this middle chap could be worth 30% of sales, but perhaps only buys shirts when there's an offer on. But he may like to be communicated to as a VIP, so they don't get a sale notification, but instead get invited to view an exclusive offer. Our next stage is that we then really start to dig into the transactional analysis. So this is where we actually get into the real nitty-gritty of it. And we use RFM, which has been around since the early 70s. Lots of people think that this is old hat. I think I prefer to call it tried and tested. The reason we use it really is that we do it for absolutely everybody, so it allows us to benchmark, and it's also a great base for propensity modelling. So RFM is literally recency, so how recent customers have bought from you, frequency, how often they buy from you, and then obviously then monetary, how much they spend with you. Don't bother cleaning your glasses. I made this fuzzy. I didn't want to give away too much. But what we then do is we put all the information into these grids, and then we talk through various parts of the data set, what that might mean to the brand, and where there are possible opportunities. So, for instance, it could be that the people within this group here, which is 13 months plus, there may be too many people in that group or too little people in that group, so there could be an argument to say that you should be doing X, Y, and Z because of that. Like I said, it's a bit of trying not to show you anything behind the curtain while showing you what's behind the curtain. We do the same thing for frequency as well. So again, we're highlighting areas where there is odd behaviour or opportunity within the base, and sometimes we may point out where there's some good stuff going on, as well, because, if there's good stuff, then that gives the retail an opportunity to capitalise on it. We also look at customer churn, but we look at customer churn in a slightly different way, because in order to do it properly, you need to have multiple data sets. And of course, we've only got the one. So what we tend to do is we look at how many customers were recruited in a given time period. Because this is a fashion retailer, we looked at it in seasons. And then we look at the people who were first recruited or first became customers within those seasons and their subsequent behaviour to try and understand what their churn was like. So, and then again we highlight areas where they could be good or bad. So in this case, something happened in spring 14, and that we needed to point out to them, and then something again happened in spring 16 as well. So that was to say that there are areas there for them to either tackle or replicate. Then the next bit we look at is actually first purchase. So we find first purchase really, really important. Not that long ago, I did a project with a very, very large international retailer who was using one of the world's largest data agencies for their insight. And this data agency fell into their normal trap. What they did is they hired some incredibly clever boffins straight out of Oxford and Cambridge, who were doing lots of really amazing modelling work for them. And they were ignoring the first 3 purchases of these customers because they didn't have enough data points for it to be statistically relevant, at which point I almost fell off my chair laughing. Obviously, that first purchase is incredibly important. It's the first time you actually hear from a customer what they really are into, what they've actually parted money with. And so we really concentrate on this. So whilst it may not be statistically perfect, it gives you a good base to start with, and it enables you to start your test and learn programs. So typically, you can see there's a person with a first purchase that comes in, I'd say, an average order value of X, goes on to perform so much better than somebody who comes in with an average order value of something else. So typically one of our recommendations is to find out what that sweet spot of the average order value is, and then try and work out ways to encourage customers to move up into that average order value banding. And what's really strange, we found consistently that even if you use offers to bribe customers to step up to that next average order value banding, if their first purchase is in that banding, they tend to stay there and behave like those customers going forward, which is sort of slightly counterintuitive, but I think it seems to lock their purchase behaviour into that first order purchase. So, we then looked specifically at discounting. So T.M.Lewin had a particular issue that they wanted, a particular request that they wanted to us to establish on there. So in particular, they do the 4 shirts for 100 deal that every shirt retailer does, and they wanted to see how that worked for them. And because there was certain hippo pushback trying to say that perhaps we shouldn't be giving quite so much margin away. So there was a couple of groups that came in, and it turned out that they had a 60% increase in cash margin from customers who were coming in on the 4 for 100 deal. So we actually said, you know what, you should just keep calm and carry on, and tell the hippo to get back to counting their beans. Another thing we always look at is time between orders. So we look at how different customer groups behave. This is it helps us identify when customers have a propensity to lapse, and this informs marketing automation. So let's say it takes 100 days to go from the first order to the second order, but actually when you look at your better groups of customers, that might actually be 60 days or 50 days. So what we do is you identify what the sweet spot is for your good customers, and then you encourage everybody else to behave in the same way. And then again, once you start encouraging that behaviour with that loyalty, they then tend to carry on behaving in that way. So you can modify customer behaviour particularly with marketing automation when it's sent at the right time. So like I said, so typically, it takes good customers to place their second order. And then finally, we deliver a whole load of recommendations and action points. We find that we'd like to deliver almost a to-do list rather than a sort of 200-page report that you might see from other agencies, which which have a nice big thump when you put it on a desk, but generally then gets put up on a shelf and gathers dust. We find that if we deliver almost a to-do list of recommendations, then the clients actually then work through that list, actually get some results, and then we're much more likely to be invited back to do some more work. So as the founder of my last company said, good work leads to more work. And then Cormac did give us some nice quotes on this. He came up to understand. They brought us in to help them understand what type of customers they had on their database, which contributed to ongoing customer profiling and brand proposition work. He was very complimentary about our work, and most importantly, he said that this has given us the confidence that our decisions in future will be profitable ones. So I don't know if Cormac is here, but thank you very much for that.